All right, well, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sparks Planning Commission meeting. This is our February 7th, 2019 meeting. I want to welcome everybody here in the audience this evening, everyone watching on Sparks Centennial TV and on Facebook. We'll move on to item number 2. That's roll call. Madam Secretary.
Commissioner Perry?
Present.
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Blaylock?
Present.
Commissioner Brock?
Here.
Commissioner Fields?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
Present.
Commissioner Vanderwell?
Here.
Assistant City Attorney Allison McCormick?
Here.
Assistant Community Services Director Armando Ornelas?
Here.
It's great, everyone's here. Thank you very much for that. Before we get started, just a quick announcement. Please silence your cell phones. Got a big agenda tonight. Want to try to limit distractions as much as possible. We'll move on to item number 3. That's public comment. I do have one request to speak from Ms. Marilyn Brainerd.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Marilyn Brainerd, and I'm just here very briefly to applaud the planning of the Pioneer Meadows project. That's number 10 on your agenda, but I don't really feel that I needed to stay for that. I just wanted to say, as a former Parks and Recreation Commissioner for this fine city many years ago, I think it's wonderful that you are combining the parks, that you are having 2 instead of 3 smaller parks in the Pioneers plan. I think it speaks very well. I live in Wingfield Springs, and we have, I happen to live by the largest one of our neighborhood parks, Pelican Park, but the rest of them are small parks, and I think that our youth deserve, especially in the adults too, but the youth, team activities that, that they really enjoy, and it's not possible in our very small neighborhood parks. So I think it's a much better use of the land, and I certainly hope no one would oppose that idea. And I just think it's very forward-thinking, and I think it's a time that's really very appropriate. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. You're welcome to stay for the whole meeting if you'd like.
Well, it's not that I wouldn't like to, but my husband would probably like to have his dinner in some reasonable hour, but thank you for that offer. I appreciate it, Scott.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Is there any other public comment? This is a public comment for any item on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing none, I will close this public comment period. We'll move on to item number 4 in our agenda. That's approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes from staff or from the commissioners on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to.
Mr. Chair, I move to approval of the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Reed. We have a second.
Second.
A second by Commissioner Vanderwell. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried unanimously. Move on to item number 5. This is approval of the minutes. The first item up for approval of the minutes is the review of our minutes from the January 15th, 2019 study session. Were there any changes or corrections from the commission on those minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
I move
Commissioner
to
Vanderwell.
approve the minutes.
We have a motion by Commissioner Vanderwell. Is there a second?
Second. Oh,
I'm going to give that one to Commissioner Reed. You just missed to Commissioner Brock. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Vanderwell to approve as submitted, a second by Commissioner Reed. All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Those minutes carry unanimously. The second item under number 5 is approval of our July 17th, January. God, where's my mind at? January 17th Planning Commission meeting minutes. Were there any changes or corrections to those minutes by the commission?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes of the January 17th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, we have a motion to approve as submitted by Commissioner Reed. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Brock. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Those minutes carry unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to item number 6. That's informational items. Do we have any informational items from staff?
Mr. Chairman, we do not.
Okay, no informational items from staff. That'll get us into the meat of our agenda, our public hearing items. The first up is going to be PCN 180068. This is a request to amend the existing special use permit SP 050011 to allow for the operation of a transportation passenger terminal at Centennial Plaza. So we'll turn this one over to staff.
Good evening, Commissioner Carey and Planning Commission. I'm Karen Melby, I'm Development Service Manager. Before you tonight is a request for a conditional use permit to amend the special use permit SP 05001 to allow for a transportation passenger terminal on a site approximately 2.6 acres located at 1421 Victorian, or also known as Centennial Plaza. You can see here on the vicinity map, it's this property outlined in cyan along Victorian Avenue. This request for the approval of the conditional use permit is an amendment, as I stated, to an existing special use permit to allow Greyhound Lines, Inc. to operate its intercity or interstate bus service on this property. In 2005, SP 05011 was approved by the City of Sparks with 14 conditions of approval to allow the RTC, or Regional Transportation Commission, to develop Centennial Plaza. According to the 2005 special use permit application and staff report, Centennial Plaza was intended to provide connections to local bus service. It was constructed with 15 bus bays, employee parking, and 12,814 square feet building with approximately 2,000 square feet for retail space serving the transfer facility. Centennial Plaza was designed and approved as a facility for the RTC's regional bus service. Centennial Plaza functions as a local bus transfer station, enabling RTC customers to make connections between buses arriving and departing from Centennial Plaza, or to connect to RTC's transfer stations in downtown Reno to access other RTC buses routes departing from that facility. RTC staff indicates that the transit center currently serves 8 buses per hour, with the center designed to serve up to 40 buses per hour. Here is the site plan. As you can see shown in blue here, this would be the area that Greyhound would be taking, and this would be their 2 bays on the site plan. While there are certainly RTC passengers who begin or conclude their bus travel at Centennial Plaza, the special use permit was approved based on the belief that the vast majority of RTC passengers would arrive and depart from this facility by RTC bus. RTC has then entered into an agreement with Greyhound to lease 2 bus bays and approximately 1,200 square feet of retail space for their ticket office, for Greyhound's ticket office and waiting area. Greyhound schedules indicate that there are 5 buses arriving and 5 buses departing daily. Traffic analysis conducted by the traffic engineer using actual tube counts at the Reno facility in December 2018 counted 22 trips per day attributed to the buses, 12 from 3 employees and 46 from passengers, for a total of 78 average daily trips in the Reno facility. Greyhound indicates on average that there are 10 passengers per bus, resulting in an average of 100 passengers arriving or departing daily. In October of 2018, presentation at City Council, Chief Operating Officer Bill Blankenship made remarks acknowledging that the Greyhound passengers will be picked up and dropped off by private vehicles, including shuttle or share ride services. The traffic analysis prepared by Selegi engineers observed on December 11, 2018, that a minimum of 67% of the passengers were dropped off or picked up by vehicles or shuttles. City staff's primary concern regarding an intercity or interstate bus terminal operating at Centennial Plaza is the current absence of a designated passenger drop-off or pickup zone. Victorian Avenue, adjacent to this Centennial Plaza, has two narrow lanes with no on-street parking and no shoulder. Victorian Plaza, which is this road here, I'm sorry, I'm off. Victorian Plaza's right here, which borders on the east side, is also constrained. The Sparks Police Department is concerned about the obstruction of the streets by vehicles dropping off or picking up passengers and the safety of pedestrians exiting or entering vehicles. The city's transportation manager has stated that the passengers loading and unloading needs to occur on site at Centennial Plaza facility, so as to not negatively impact the surrounding streets. The conditional use permit application submitted by Greyhound proposes employee parking and loading and unloading of passengers to occur on A Street, public right-of-way. Staff reviewed the proposal using A Street and expressed concerns. The transportation manager stated that the loading or unloading zone needs to be off the city right-of-way. Centennial Plaza is 1 block from the fire station, and the Sparks Fire Department objects to the use of A Street for this purpose, particularly because access to A Street is via 16th, which is their access for ingress and egress from the fire station. Fire station is by far the busiest fire station within the city of Sparks. Installing a loading zone on A for Greyhound would also compromise this access for the fire station for emergency access when Victorian Avenue is closed during special events. Based on the concerns expressed by city staff, RTC, which is the landlord for Greyhound, has submitted a conceptual exhibits proposed location of the circulation plan for on-site. You can see in this exhibit here, they're proposing to put it along the south side of their south driveway. They also submitted a conceptual plan showing where they would put signage which would direct passengers to this loading and unloading zone. Condition 4 recognizes that federal condition 4 and 5 require that the installation of this passenger loading zone and supporting directional signage and striping substantially is similar to this exhibit A and B. And it must be installed by May 31st is the date we're projecting for 2019. Condition 4 also recognizes that federal and state laws may require changes to the operation of Centennial Plaza over time. As proposed, conditional 4 and 5 are written to allow RTC and also Greyhound to modify, with the approval of the city engineer, the location of this loading zone within Centennial Plaza site and the corresponding signage if changes are required to address the operational issues that may arise sometime in the future. City staff, including the city engineer, the fire chief, and the police chief, are fine with these conditions 4 and 5 as submitted in the revised conditions that we submitted to you this afternoon. Most importantly, having the loading and unloading off-site is the main issue. Regarding employee parking on A Street does not qualify as a frontage for Centennial Plaza. However, Centennial Plaza is located within the Victorian Square, and the need for employee parking can be satisfied by the availability of the city-owned parking lot facilities within Victorian Square. Therefore, city staff is not proposing a requirement of off-street parking as a condition of approval and anticipates that the need for parking is mitigated by the additions of on-site and the on-site loading zone. Addressing the 5 conditional use permit findings. Finding C1, compliance with the comprehensive plan. The use of this site as a transportation passenger terminal for Greyhound would provide a transportation mode for interstate travel, which is not currently available within the city of Sparks, supporting goal C2. Greyhound provides an alternative transportation option not currently provided within the city of Sparks, which supports policy C9. Finding C2, compatibility with the existing or permitted uses. Centennial Plaza is located within the Victorian Square area, which is the heart of downtown Sparks. There is a mix of residential, gaming, bars, restaurants, and of various commercial land uses and residential. The RTC transit facility is existing, and adding Greyhound will provide an alternative transportation mode within the city of Sparks. Adding approximately 10 Greyhound buses per day is not anticipated to adversely impact the surrounding land uses, provided the impacts are mitigated or the loading zone is provided. Finding C3, natural resource impairment. The site was developed as Centennial Plaza in the year 2006. City staff does not believe that approval of this conditional use permit would impair the availability of natural resources or the region's ability to support its population. Finding C4, which addresses identified impacts. The identified impacts are the pickup and drop-off area, parking, and directional signs. All three of these items I have previously discussed under the analysis, and I won't repeat my information for that. Addressing finding C5, the public notice. Public notice was published in the Reno Gazette Journal on January 24th, 2019. We mailed 42 notices out to the property owners within 500 feet of this property. This afternoon, staff received one letter from the Nuggets General Manager in opposition to the transportation passenger terminal, which has been provided to you. I also received a phone call from a property owner asking for clarification on this request this afternoon. Staff recommends approval with the 5 conditions. We also have revised the conditions which we presented to you this afternoon. And so we are recommending approval with the revision of the 5 conditions, or particularly condition 4 and 5. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Karen. Before I turn it over to the applicant, I just wanted to, for the record, identify, we received a revised staff report this afternoon. Could you please highlight what those changes were in the staff report, and then maybe just highlight the new condition?
Okay, so what we did when we revised the staff report this afternoon, we included acknowledgement of Exhibit A and also B. We talked about that and recognized that. And then also the revision to conditions 4 and 5 is that we are saying these are conceptual, but I'm sorry, I flipped too far. The condition rewording of 4 and 5, did you want me to read that or?
That's fine.
Okay.
Just explain it.
But
That's
we referenced that it would be conceptually referencing exhibits A and B.
Okay.
And that was the change to the staff report.
Thank you very much. Armando?
I would just, to elaborate on Ms. Meldy's comment regarding conditions 4 and 5. Essentially, basically, conditions 4 and 5 were revised to say that the loading zone and the directional signage and striping will be installed substantively similar to the exhibits that were provided. There is flexibility to modify them subject to city engineer approval, but the expectation is that unless that occurs, they would be installed per those exhibits, basically.
Okay, I appreciate that, and for everyone at home following along, now they get it. Okay, at this time, we'll turn it over to the applicant, the two gentlemen from Greyhound. You're welcome to come up and provide a presentation. Our rules of procedure limit the presentation to 15 minutes.
We have no presentation.
Okay.
My name is Art Zorio. I'm an attorney for Greyhound Lines. I have with me Ray Nunez. He's the director of real estate development for Greyhound Lines. And I'll just turn it over to Ray for a brief comment.
Okay. Welcome, Ray.
Yeah, I welcome everybody. Yeah, we are thankful for being in Sparks. We've been operating since late December, and we agree with what the staff has presented. And we agree with the approval of the conditions. However, in doing so, we're not waiving any of our rights or claims that are made in the pending litigation.
Okay.
And I'm here to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, thank you for that. I think commissioners, let's hold off until after the public hearing, if there's any questions for the applicant and staff. Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, this is a public hearing item, so I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. I ask if you please come to the podium, identify yourself, your address, and you will have up to 3 minutes to talk. So this time we'll open up the public hearing on PCN 180068. Anyone wishing to come forward?
Mr. Chair, I do have one.
Oh, we have one, okay. Looks like we have Mr. Jay Witt. Welcome back, sir.
Second home.
We pass that out, make that part of the record.
Don't start me too early here. I think I need all 3 minutes. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Jay Witt, Silverwing Development. As the property owner of the Bridges, the Deco, Fountain House mixed use, the upcoming Atrium project, along with 5 other parcels yet to be developed, we take great issue with the findings of the lack of mitigation of the proposed use. When we acquired and developed the properties, we relied upon the fact that Centennial Plaza was only for local bus services. This is supported by 2005 SUP. Per SMC Title 20, the SUPs and CUPs must be amended to address impacts in the surrounding properties. What is the city, RTC, or Greyhound doing to address the uptick in property crimes and vagrancy we've already experienced in the area the last 4 weeks, which are only going to increase during the warmer weather? The city's traffic consultant has documented that while 46% of the passengers are being picked up, 33 are simply leaving the station on foot. These are not our tenants. Passenger information from Greyhound says only 10 riders per bus are departing Victorian Square. Has this number been verified by the city consultant? If not, why not? 40 East 4th Street, Reno is an empty transportation facility a half block away from the Amtrak bus facility where Greyhound departs to other cities. Why is the station not being used? Additionally, throughout many hearings with RTC and the city of Reno, it was stated that the 4th Street station in Reno was only at half capacity, and the Amtrak station was also a viable option. However, in the end, Reno took issues with each of these options. Why was Reno throwing up so many hurdles? Has the commission looked at the police calls around the Greyhound terminal in Reno over the last years? If not, they should. The numbers are high. In finding number 1, the comprehensive plan states the transportation network needs to support business formation and economic vitality. I see absolutely no connection between Greyhound's business and the creation of economic vitality in the Victorian Square area. We have more crime and vagrancy this last month than we've had in the entire past 4 years. Is it a coincidence that the bus facility was vandalized last week? Finding number 2, the application is compatible with the adjacent properties. As a property owner, I can tell you there is no compatibility between our lifestyle and entertainment district and Greyhound's customer base. They're not renting our apartments, they're not patronizing our retail, and they're not coming to attend a show or a movie. If this application is allowed to proceed, you could expect to see further increase in vagrancy and property crimes. The SPD, which is already overextended, will have more demands placed on it, making it less available to other areas than Sparks. Victorian Square will not find success in bringing Greyhound into the area with 33% of the passengers simply walking out of the stations into the shadows. Greyhound rests their position on the fact that some aspect of the station's original costs were federally funded, so the RTC has to provide reasonable access for private carriers. But who is asking the question, reasonable at what cost to the surrounding community? I find the entire situation unreasonable, and we should not be asked to bear the long-term cost of this irrational plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Witt. 5 seconds to spare. Are there any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment period. We'll bring this back to the commission for any questions of staff or the applicant and discussion. Any commissioners have any questions?
Yeah, sure, Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Commissioner Fields, I have a question for the applicant. Thank you for being here, gentlemen. First question is, do you currently, you've had a station in the city of Reno for many years. Is that station still open and running?
No, the former station was closed upon relocation to Sparks. So we closed it on or about December 28th or 29th. It's been vacant essentially since then.
Okay, so you will not be keeping that open, the Reno one?
No,
is-
that property was sold in March of last year, and we were leasing it from March up until the end of December.
Okay, so Sparks is the main station. Now, would that be, would you consider an uptick in the traffic with Sparks being the only location? Because you're not just having the one than what you had in Reno? Or is it going to be similar as far as the traffic?
Let me make sure I understand your question correctly. Are you suggesting if we're expecting an increase in ridership?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
We think that could be possible just based on the attractiveness of the facility here. This Centennial Plaza is really a very nicely designed and well-located facility. And so that was part of the attractiveness to come here as well. It's modern. The facility in Reno used to be, it had dormitories, which we don't have anymore. And it was a training, it provided a driver training as well. So it had some maintenance activities. We abandoned those long ago, but the facility was, the square footage to support that was still there. It was just vacant. And so it made it, we think an attraction for some of the homeless folks that kind of tend to hang around there that got associated with Greyhound. And so, so that being the case, we expect now being in a modern facility that there could be, over time, I think just a little bit of an increase in ridership just based on the quality of the facility.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the applicant from the commission?
I
Commissioner
have a
Reed?
question. Can you address some of the concerns that Mr. Witt spoke of earlier?
Yeah, there was a comment about crime. I'll address that. Unfortunately, Greyhound gets sometimes unfairly targeted with being the source of crime. And what we have found is that Greyhound is actually a victim often because our stations, like the one that we had in Reno, was large, and we tend to be open, through, in some cases, late into the night, early in the morning. And in some cases, people are looking for shelter. They're looking for restrooms. And if the word gets out, hey, Greyhound's open at 11 p.m. or late, then some folks are attracted to that, and that's what we find. So we're as much a victim of that. And then if something happens nearby, often the report will say, Greyhound, although it wasn't at the Greyhound station, it was near the Greyhound station. So we find that our name gets associated with that just generally. So I think that's an unfair categorization that there is necessarily an uptick in crime. And as far as the vandalization of the old facility, well, it's vacant. Vacant properties, we all know, just don't do well. It's been vacant for over a month now.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners?
Commissioner Carey?
Go ahead.
I just have a follow-up question on Commissioner Reed's, when you're talking about vagrancy and things like that. Does Greyhound have security to maybe deter those types of things?
We have worked with RTC to provide in the lease security. So RTC provides the security for the station. And there is a clause in the lease that if there is a need for increased security, that the parties will sit down, evaluate the data, and see what would be the appropriate remedy for that.
Okay, Ray, I had a question. So currently, what we've seen in our staff reports, it's about 5 bus trips a day coming in, 5 coming out. Are there any plans for future expansion at this time?
The reality is the buses carry 50, they have 50 seats, right? And so while more folks can buy tickets, that assumes that buses get maxed out, right? So we would have to kind of max out those seats before we get to that point. The other part that I think is mitigating that is that we've recently entered into a relationship with Amtrak. And so the Amtrak train is actually transporting Greyhound passengers between here and Salt Lake City. And so we have actually reduced some bus schedules because of that. It's a collaboration that we entered into with Amtrak. I think it was January of last year, where we saw that as a win-win as we collaborate with Amtrak around the country. This is one of the more recent examples of that. So in that case, that actually led to a reduction in buses and passengers because of that partnership.
And I'm curious, with leasing 2 bays is what's proposed in the staff report, what would be the max number of trips you think you could get from 2 bays? You know, amount of buses coming in and out with just 2 bays.
Yeah, well, now you're kind of getting into capacity and demand
Sure.
type of question, and but just conceivably, it just depends on the dwell time.
Okay.
You know, what I can tell you is we've got, you know, approximately 5 in, 5 out on the weekends. There may be an extra one here or there because there's just more activity on the weekend. But I think that's probably more a question perhaps for RTC, just generally in terms of capacity and demand.
I appreciate that. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Blanco.
Yes, you said that you had an agreement with RTC to provide security and that you would be revisiting what is being done if there is some sort of increase in crime. What exactly do you look at to make those decisions, and when do you decide to revisit the security that's there?
Initially, the security is provided by RTC. That's part of our rent. We're paying for that, essentially. It's built into the rent. And so I don't have the lease here in front of me, but it was something to the effect that if there is determined to be a need for more security, the parties would sit down, look at the data, the proper data, and then formulate a plan.
How exactly do you determine the need for more security? Is there a certain threshold of instances of crime that causes you to revisit that, or is there what exactly is the policy for that?
I think it's just going to depend on I know when we've looked at things in the past, it could be something such as determining where the concern is, what time of day. Sometimes it's more at night. And so perhaps maybe you may need more coverage at night or more of a frequency of patrolling or an additional person at night versus in the daytime. So that's kind of one of the things you look at.
So it's not something that is scheduled to be looked at throughout the...
Well, no, because if there's no need, there's no reason to sit down.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I think you're off the hook. Were there any questions for staff from the commission?
Commissioner Carey, I've got a question.
Okay, Commissioner
For staff.
Vanderbilt.
I guess what my question is when you started your presentation, you said in 2005, RTC received a special use permit to build Centennial Plaza. And under that special use permit, it was connections to local bus services for local bus transfer stations for RTC local bus routes. So I guess what my question is RTC is local and Greyhound is cross-state. So in that special use permit, is there a gray area or, a way to say, okay, well, it's no longer, we can also do interstate?
Allison McCormick for the record. The conditional use permit would be the process to amend that special use permit. The city's view of the existing special use permit is that if it were not amended, it would not allow an interstate or intercity bus use, but amending it through the conditional use process, permit process, would allow that use, because that process provides an opportunity to review and mitigate potential impacts from that change in use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vanderwall. Any questions for staff? Okay, see none. I did have a question for RTC. I did see Mr. Jicklings here in the audience. I was wondering if he could, had a couple questions for you. David, welcome to the Sparks Planning Commission.
Thank you.
My question was about capacity at Centennial Plaza. As we've seen in the staff report, it's the opinion of RTC that there is enough capacity to accommodate this use. I'm wondering about, currently there's no passenger pickup allowed on site, and I think it's been that way since Centennial Plaza opened up. I was curious about, in your opinion, about capacity of the proposed use and the proposed unload and loading area. Would that interfere with the current bus service and potential future bus service?
David Jickling, Director of Public Transportation for the RTC. Thank you, Chairman Carey. Good questions. As part of this process, through the federal kind of review that we needed to do about capacity, we looked at both 4th Street Station and Centennial Plaza to ascertain how much bus service we were currently providing, how those schedules were working, the bay capabilities that we had at both facilities. And through that analysis, the conclusion was 4th Street Station did not have the capacity, but Centennial Plaza did. We had actually 5 bays out of the existing, I believe, 14 or 15 bays that we weren't using whatsoever. And so right there was certainly opportunity for buses, whether they be our service or someone else's, to utilize those. In terms of a question you had earlier about capacity of a bay per hour, generally we think about 15 minutes is about right, so 4 buses an hour in a bay. And as Mr. Nunez mentioned, it really does just depend on how long is that bus going to be there. If your schedule is so efficient that the bus stops and goes, you could have 40 buses there an hour, but most times you need some recovery and all that for the bus. So we assumed when we built this project and the original special use permit that maximum capacity would be each of those bays having 4 buses an hour, basically 16 hours a day. So that's where those numbers came from. From a design standpoint, because it was such a constrained site and generally we prefer to keep private vehicles separate from our transit vehicles. And so that's why the original design and concept here did not have any public access with vehicles onto the site. Once Greyhound started operating, we did see some, obviously there was some confusion amongst folks coming and going, and it's pretty easy, even just during normal operations, we have people who sometimes coming eastbound on Victorian get confused and come into our facility. So that is certainly something that had happened periodically. Our view was the best way to manage this and to accommodate the request of the City of Sparks staff was to come up with this passenger pickup drop-off lane that we will mark through there. We've ascertained how that would operate, and we're confident we can do that with minimal conflict with our buses. And we think that will work quite satisfactory in terms of addressing the requests of Spark staff.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Are there any questions for RTC? Go ahead, Mr. Fewens.
Thanks for coming again, guys. How many bays are open in the 4th Street Station in Reno currently?
4th Street Station, I knew I was going to get asked these questions.
Is there more than 2?
Open? Oh, no, there are none open. Every one of those bays is occupied.
Okay. We heard testimony from the applicant today that they have a partnership with Amtrak. Is the 4th Street Station in Reno closer to the Amtrak station than Centennial Plaza?
It is.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for our RTC friends? Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Were there any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll bring this one back for discussion, commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion if we're ready for that.
Yep, I'd like to say a little.
Hold off on that,
Little
Commissioner Reed.
discussion. On that, Commissioner Fewens here, I have a problem with the motion or the approval as it's coming forth for the conditional use permit with us. I am having trouble finding C1 in the findings, particularly with goal C2. That's saying that it's providing a transportation network that supports business formation and attraction and economic vitality. I'm just not seeing how I can make that finding. And also with C2, I think in 2005, when the special use permit at that time, now it's conditional use permit, was made, that said that retail spaces could be leased out by RTC. And they even pointed out things like as newspaper stands, concession stands for the passengers in RTC for local use. And I'm finding that interstate use is not compatible with the permitted uses in the adjacent properties. At the time, and even 2005, it was tourist commercial down there, which it is no longer. We are now in mixed-use development. That is apartments to the north. You're looking at a lot of development that's happened in downtown Sparks that has been great development for our city. Not saying that this use is going to, be horrible as a use there, but I just don't think it is compatible with the existing mixed-use development with the apartments. I see local bus service as being compatible with the existing uses because you are dealing with people that are going to jobs, going shopping. They are not essentially coming here from out of the state, to where I see that a station that has been open in Reno where you have closer use to the current Amtrak that they have a partnership with. I am finding that I cannot find the finding C2 that staff had found. So I will not be in favor of this conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Fewens. Commissioner Reed,
My motion?
if
Okay.
you're so inclined.
I move to approve conditional use permit CU 18-0018 associated with PCN 18-0068, adopting findings C1 through C5 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report and subject to the 5 conditions of approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Reed to approve. Is there a second on the motion? I'll go ahead and second the motion. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Reed, a second by myself. Any comments, discussion on the motion? I have, go ahead, Commissioner
I would like to make one.
Peterson.
I'd like to disagree with my colleague Don. As I checked these findings out over and over again, and really I see no arguments in it that we could really present that have not been very well covered on the findings. In addition, I thought the conditions were written real well, and they're pretty well finding, and I believe that both parties in this case could recognize these conditions and live with them. So I would kind of be for this project.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Are there any other comments, discussion on the motion? I had one just for the record. I will be supporting the motion. Well, obviously I seconded it. But my main concern is I do certainly concur with staff that this is a substantial change from the original special use permit that was approved in 2005. I think Centennial Plaza is a very important asset to this community and to our comprehensive plan and to meet our goals for transit in the city. My big concern with this proposed use is that it doesn't conflict with the main and primary use of Centennial Plaza, and that's local bus service. I think from a land use perspective, the proposed use seems fine. in that it's limited. It will be a secondary use to the primary use of being a local transfer station or transit station. I think at this level that it's proposed, that's acceptable. My big concern is that I wouldn't want to see this proposed use becoming the primary use, and it stays a secondary use in order to protect transit and to help promote our comprehensive land use goals. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. I'll call for, you've all heard, we have a motion to approve in a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, so for the record, that was Commissioner Vanderwell and Commissioner Fewens. Okay, so the motion passes 5-2. Thank you very much, commissioners. We'll move on to item number 7 on our agenda. This is PCN 190001, and this is a conditional use permit to allow auto and truck repair on Vista Boulevard. Ian, welcome.
Chairman Carey, members of the Planning Commission, Ian Crittenden, Senior Planner. As stated, this is a request for a conditional use permit to allow auto and truck repair light at a location at the address right here, I'm sorry. 5245 Vista Boulevard. You can see here on the vicinity map, it is the site outlined in cyan. It is a portion of the Aspen Glen Shopping Center. This shopping center, the Aspen Glen Shopping Center, is located in the Kiley Ranch South Plan Development. That Plan Development Handbook specifically calls out this site, the Aspen Glen Shopping Center, as being subject to the use requirements of C1, the Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District in the city of Sparks. The applicant is proposing to occupy roughly 500 square feet. You can see here on a site map that the applicant provided, kind of the location of that specific tenancy that they're proposing to occupy. It's roughly 500 square feet located in the northeast corner of that building. The applicant currently owns and operates Smog Monkey at 1564 Prater Way, and this will be a second location for this business. Emission testing would take place in the parking space directly adjacent to the entrance, about where the red car is on this site map. Emission testing takes approximately 3 to 5 minutes, and only 1968 and older and newer heavy-duty gasoline vehicles require a 2-speed test, as well as 2-speed idle test, as well as 1996 and older light-duty gasoline automobiles. All newer light-duty automobiles do not require the 2-speed idle test. The idle test will produce some noise, as idling cars do, although this site is adjacent to Vista Boulevard, which produces quite a bit more noise due to traffic and so forth adjacent to the site. The comprehensive plan land use for this site, this location is C, which is commercial, and the zoning of C1, or neighborhood commercial, is in compliance with that land use designation. The site has existing and mature landscaping, which does comply with Sparks Municipal Code Section 20.04.006, which is landscaping and screening. Required parking for auto and truck repair light per the Sparks Municipal Code is 1 space per 500 square feet. The site has ample parking, and the applicant's lease guarantees them 2 parking spaces. And as this site, the applicant's tenancy is only 500 square feet, this use would only require 1 parking space per code. Staff does believe that the parking allocated for this use is adequate and complies with the parking standards. We also did an evaluation of the parking that's also inside of the site. Here's kind of a map kind of showing the other uses that are on the site. The site has a total of 206 available parking spaces, which is more than adequate to meet the demand of 122 spaces would be required based on the existing businesses and the anticipated demand for the vacant businesses or vacant buildings on the site, plus the demand for this new business. Based on the transportation engineers, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, this use would be expected to generate no more than 40 average daily trips with a peak of 5.19 peak hour trips. That is well below the threshold that would require a parking or a traffic study. Staff has received one email in opposition to this item. That email was given to Planning Commission at the study session. It's also been posted to the website as part of this item. There are 5 findings associated with a conditional use permit. Finding 1 addresses compliance with the comprehensive plan. The goals and policies of the comprehensive plan that this request would support include goal MG1, which is to support economic vitality by providing a non-residential land use space. Goal EV1 to grow and diversify Sparks' economy. And policy C4 to require sidewalks for pedestrians on all street networks. This is a non-residential land use, and it provides a service that's not available in the immediate vicinity, which supports both goals MG1 and EV1. The site has been developed since 2000, and there are sidewalks throughout the interior of the site and along the exterior on the road network. Finding 2 addresses compatibility. The site is adjacent to single-family residential on 3 sides, kind of on the west here, the north, and then the east across Vista Boulevard. And then to the south is the remainder of the Aspen Glen shopping center. Because there is adequate parking on the site and the expected traffic generation is low, the proposed emission testing facility should be relatively quiet, and the site is located along a relatively busy street, help mitigate the noise that it will create. City staff views this proposal or this proposed use as compatible with the existing adjacent uses on the site, to the site. Finding C3 addresses impacts on the natural environment. As stated, this site has been developed since 2000. Staff does not believe this use would impair the availability of natural resources or the region's ability to support the population. Finding C4 looks at identified impacts. The specific identified impacts that staff saw on this item were parking, traffic, noise, and another issue about where the location of the testing unit would be, and I'll get into that. As I mentioned, parking, staff went through that pretty detailed. We believe that parking can easily be met for this site. The traffic generation for this use is very low and should be more than easily accommodated by the location of this site. Noise, idle test will generate noise, but not nearly the amount of noise that's already going to be generated off of Vista Boulevard, which has a high speed and it's already going to generate quite a bit of noise. And then the smog unit location impact that we addressed was just a concern that whatever cables and cordage needed to run that smog machine, which would be brought out, would not cross a sidewalk or produce a tripping hazard. Condition or proposed condition approval number 3 addresses that and requires that be run in the landscaping so that it doesn't produce a hazard. And then finally, finding C5 requires proper noticing. Public notice was published in the Reno Gazette-Journal on January 24th. In addition, 86 notices were sent to all owners of property within 500 feet of the subject property on January 23rd. The Planning Commission functions as the public hearing for this item. Staff is recommending approval of this item, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Planning Commission has.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Is the applicant's representative here? Do you wish to speak? Okay. All right. I'll answer any questions. Okay. Come on down. I think we may have some questions for the applicant.
Chair, I'd like to ask the applicant a question. Could I just
Go ahead,
ask
Commissioner Reed.
what your hours of operation are?
My hours of operation,
Weekdays and weekends?
we're gonna be open 7:30 to 5:30 Monday through Friday and 7:30 to 4 on Saturday, closed on Sunday.
And could you identify yourself for the
Oh,
record?
I'm sorry, my name's Robert Kovacs. I'm the owner of Smog Monkey.
Hey, thank you, Robert. Any other questions for Robert? Okay. We'll move on. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the public hearing. This is a public hearing item. Did we receive any requests to speak? Okay. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing for anyone in the audience that'd like to make a public comment on this item. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and we'll bring this back to the commission for questions, comments, or possible motion.
Mr. Chair, if I may make a motion, if we're ready for that?
Oh, I have a question, actually.
Hold on, Commissioner Brock. We got a question from Commissioner Blanco.
This one's for the applicant. For the stuff that's required to do the smog, will any of that be obstructing any view from the traffic headed northbound on Vista Boulevard?
Robert, come on up, identify yourself, and get that on the record.
I like the state of the,
State of the Union.
everybody standing and sitting and standing.
My concern is that I already know that turning left out of that, you could see that little area in the top of the map there. Turning left onto Vista Boulevard from there is actually a little sketchy, especially during rush hour times. And I was just curious if any of the equipment might cause an obstruction of view.
The equipment's not gonna be in the way of anything there. It's gonna sit primarily in front of the.
Is your mic on, Mike, or Robert? Is it? Okay, thank you, sorry.
It's gonna, the equipment sits, it's gonna sit right on the sidewalk. And I've got a picture here. All kinds of pictures. There we go. I'll sit right in front of that, if that's helpful. So, where his finger is, right there.
Okay,
That's where the machine's gonna sit.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Commissioner Brock, I think you're up.
Okay, I move to approve the conditional use permit CU 19-0001 associated with PCN 19-0001, adopting findings C1 through C5 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report, subject to the 3 conditions of approval as listed in the staff report.
We have a motion by Commissioner Brock to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll give that one to Commissioner
I beat her
Peterson
to
with
it.
the
I
second.
second it.
So motion by Commissioner Brock, a second by Commissioner Peterson. Any other discussion, comments on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And good job, Commissioner Peterson, on the second. Okay, we'll move on to item number 9. This is PCN 18-0070. This is a conditional use permit to allow for a brewery at 305 East Glendale Avenue. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners. I'm Jonathan Cummins, planner. PCN 18-0070 is a request for a conditional use permit to establish a brewery and tasting room on 4.82 acres at 305 East Glendale in the Industrial Zoning District. Property is outlined in cyan on the map. Breweries are allowed in the Industrial Zoning District if a site complies with the zoning code's locational criteria, as well as meeting the approval of the Planning Commission under the conditional use permit process to mitigate potential impacts that essentially a non-typical use for the zoning district might have. The proposed brewery includes 8,200 square feet of manufacturing and brewing space, 3,890 square feet of storage and warehousing, 1,350 square feet of office space, and a 1,300 square foot tasting room where customers will be able to both purchase and consume beer on site. To address one of the questions from Planning Commission's study session on Tuesday, tasting room would fit the zoning code's definition of bar/lounge, which would require in the industrial zoning district that it be limited from 6 a.m. to midnight. So the brewery overall will take up just over 10 or 12% of the overall site at 305 East Glendale. The area of work for the brewery is going to be this top section of the image here. The applicant has allowed 34 parking spaces per their agreement with their property owner, per the uses proposed in that breakdown that I gave you. The business would require 13 spaces, so they're well within what they're allowed on the site. Further, the city's transportation manager has evaluated the application and the 29 peak hour trips anticipated by the applicant's calculations and concurs with those numbers, and considers them to be generally acceptable for this use at this location. Given the primary function of the site is a manufacturing and warehousing facility with only a relatively small portion of the site to be used as a tasting room open to the public for limited hours, staff finds that the proposed use be compatible with the surrounding uses. Staff believes that the 5 required findings for a CUP can be made. Finding C1 requires compliance with the comprehensive plan. Staff believes that the proposed use would contribute to goal MG1, which would provide economic vitality by providing a non-residential land use base, and goal MG2 to foster diversity in the land use mix. The proposed use would bring activity to the industrial district after the usual hours of operation for most businesses in the industrial zoning district. Finding C2 requires compatibility with surrounding uses. The majority of the site is used for manufacturing and warehousing, matching the surrounding and nearby uses. All surrounding uses are zoned industrial and are categorized in the land use comprehensive plan as industrial as well. Finding C3 addresses the impairment of natural resources. The proposed use would be going into an established site and will not be impacting natural resources. Finding C4 requires the staff and the Planning Commission address any other identified impacts. The Environmental Control Office, the city's Environmental Control Office would regulate the uses of grease interceptors and other equipment that might be necessary to dispose of unused product and spent grain. The applicant is proposing a 9-foot wide grain silo to be established on the site. And I can kind of wave the mouse over that part of the parking area here in the top corner near the exit onto Glendale. That 9-foot silo would go there, and the fire department has deemed that to be satisfactory in order for them to get their fire engines on and off the site. Staff received no comments from outside agencies. Finding C5 requires public notice. 60 property owners within 500 feet of the site were notified on January 23rd. Also, notice was published in the Reno Gazette-Journal on January 24th. Staff received no comments from the public on this item, and staff believes the 5 findings can be made and is recommending approval.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Is the applicant's representative here? Do you wish to speak? Yeah, come on up. Please state your name and for the record. And
Yeah, my name is Gary Gomer, and the only thing I have to say is that it was a pleasure working with your staff. Jonathan's a top-notch person, so and we're looking forward to getting Sparks.
okay, any questions for Gary? Okay, thanks, Gary. Okay, well, this is a public hearing item. Do we have any requests to speak? I mean, would anyone in the audience like to provide a public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We'll bring this back to the commission for any questions or discussion.
Mr.
Mr.
Chair,
Vanderwell.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the conditional use permit CU 18-0019 associated with PCN 18-0070, adopting findings C1 through C5 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report, subject to the 4 conditions of approval as listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Vanderwell. Is there a second on the motion? I'll second. I have a second by Commissioner Blanco. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to our last public hearing item for tonight's agenda. But I guess before we do, I was wondering if we make a request for staff, if maybe we could turn the heat up in this.
It's out of our control.
It's out of our control? Okay. Think
So
warm
move
thoughts,
quickly.
everybody.
So move quickly.
We'll try to get out of here quickly. Okay, we'll move on to item number 10. This is PCN 18-0069. This is a request to amend the Pioneer Meadows Handbook. Jonathan, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners. Jonathan Cummins, planner. PCN 18-0069 is a request to amend the final approved plan for the Pioneer Meadows plan development. To amend the approved plan / handbook for a 640-acre site. The site's outlined in cyan on the map. It is east of Kylie Ranch North, west of Wingfield Springs, and south of Stonebrook plan developments. Pioneer Meadows Handbook was adopted by City Council in 2000 and has since been amended 3 times. This will be the 4th amendment to the handbook. On January 28th of this year, City Council certified comprehensive plan amendments changing the land use designations for approximately 10 acres in Pioneer Meadows from CF, community facilities, to LDR, low-density residential. So I have some images here that'll help you sort of clarify what those changes were. The 10-acre site, 10.6 acre site that was changed recently is outlined in cyan on this map in the top middle. So that old designation had that piece there listed as community facilities where a school and park was going to go, and today it's now categorized for low-density residential. So the applicant is seeking to amend the handbook to conform to this new comp plan designation, and is also taking the opportunity to amend some sections of the handbook that have been affected by the change. Overall, the proposed amendments include changes to the land uses to match the comprehensive plan, updates to the land use summary and densities tables, removal of the school site, a reduction in the number of parks from 3 to 2, where there were 3 smaller parks planned, there will now be 2 larger parks planned for Pioneer Meadows. Removal of the references to the North Spark Sphere of Influence plan, which is no longer in effect, and other minor administrative changes throughout the document. There are 10 required findings which staff believes can be made by the Planning Commission. Finding A, that an amendment is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan, and is otherwise consistent with Nevada and federal laws. Staff finds the amendment contributes to goal H2 of the Sparks Comprehensive Plan to promote a strong housing market in order to support economic vitality and growth. Finding B requires the amendment be consistent with surrounding land uses. The proposed amendment does not change the types of land uses within Pioneer Meadows, but does rearrange them a little bit in order to better reflect the new land use designations in the comprehensive plan. Finding C requires that the amendment be fiscally positive to the city. The affected area that's requiring the handbook amendment is less than 20 acres and therefore does not trigger a fiscal impact analysis. Finding D requires the amendment further the mutual interests of residents and owners of the planned development. Among other things, the changes will allow the development of 2 large parks, which will advance the Parks Department's efforts to create fewer but larger parks, which can provide better services and function more effectively for residents over time. Staff believes that this change, in addition to the more low-density housing that will be added, would mutually benefit current and future homeowners in Pioneer Meadows. Finding E requires the amendment not impair the reliance of residents and owners on provisions of the plan. The proposed changes are not expected to negatively impact current or future owners. Finding F requires the amendment will not result in changes that would adversely affect the public interest. Proposed changes are intended to facilitate and improve the development of Pioneer Meadows in a manner that's consistent with the new comp plan land use designations and would not be detrimental to the public interest. Finding G requires the amendment is consistent with the efficient development and preservation of the entire plan unit development. These amendments are intended to preserve the character of the approved plan development, and in doing so, make it consistent with new changes to the comprehensive plan. Finding H requires that the amendment not adversely affect the enjoyment of land abutting the plan development. The land use pattern and street network will remain generally the same as was originally approved. Finding I requires the amendment not solely grant or confer private benefit upon any person. The proposed amendment is intended to rectify the loss of the school site, which was outside the control of the landowners, and bringing the land use pattern into conformance with the city's comprehensive plan and realigning the designated park sites is intended to benefit the current and future owners alike. Finding J requires public notice be given and public hearing held. Notice was mailed to 1,173 property owners within the Pioneer Meadows plan development on January 23rd. Public notice was published in the Reno Gazette-Journal on January 24th. Staff did receive comments from about 10 property owners via telephone and email and a handwritten letter as well. The emails and the handwritten letter have been provided to commissioners. Staff believes the 10 findings can be made by the Planning Commission and is recommending the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to City Council.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Turn it over to the applicant's representative.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm Stacy Huggins for the record with Wood Rogers representing the applicant. I really don't have anything specifically to add to Jonathan's staff report or his presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about the amendment to the handbook.
Thank you, Stacy. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, you're off the hook. All right, this is a public hearing item. At this time, I will open up the public hearing. Did we receive any requests to speak? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to provide public comment? Come on down. Been waiting all night. Thank you. Great. Well, welcome. Just say your name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Noreen DiMaggio, and I'm a resident at Wingfield Hills near Pioneer Meadows. So unfortunately, these pictures are just not clear enough for me to know where we're talking. So I am off of Wingfield Hills near Darby Road, which is right there. I don't know if you can see the screen. So is the yellow, the question is the yellow section where they're building the houses now, is it the blue section here that they're planning on building? Isn't that area have a lot of waterways that they have to readjust? And is that as far as it goes, is back? And is there any opening to the road of Wingfield to Sparks or Pyramid?
Okay, yeah, Noreen, we'll have our staff address that when you're done. If you have any other questions or comments.
I'm just concerned, is it the blue section that they're talking about, the rebuilding?
Okay. Once you're done, we'll have our staff address that.
Yeah, I just have
that's
questions that I just don't know how to go about asking.
Cool. I think our staff got that.
Okay.
If you're done, we'll have them address that.
Okay.
Thank you, Noreen. Are there any other requests to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing at this time. We'll bring it back to staff to answer Noreen's question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan Cummins. The section in blue that we were talking about just a moment ago is employment center. It's not going to be the development of single-family housing. The housing is anticipated for the part outlined in yellow on the map.
Okay. And Noreen, if you had any other questions, you're welcome to talk with our staff afterwards. Any questions for staff? Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, I think, Jonathan, I think the public was curious about when they were gonna, the road connecting to Pyramid.
Correct, yeah. So, thank you, Commissioner Fewens. Jonathan Cummins for the record. To the best of my knowledge, the developer is anticipating connecting Wingfield Hills Road into what is Lazy 5 Parkway, meeting Pyramid Highway. That construction would begin this year. An anticipated completion date I don't have, but we do know that they're anticipating constructing that very soon, this year, in fact.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion or possible motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Peterson.
For the record. I move to forward to the City Council recommendation of the approval of the request to amend the final approval plans for the Pioneer Meadows Plan Development based on findings A through J and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Peterson. There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Brock. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, that concludes our public hearing items for tonight's agenda. We'll move on to general business. Our first item is PCN 04051. This is consideration and possible approval of a request to amend condition 14 of the original Miramonte tentative map. Danny, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Carey and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Danny Ray, Planner 1. Firstly, staff apologizes, but we'd like you to draw your attention to page 3, paragraph 2, line 4 of your staff report. An error was erroneously made and referred to Vista Boulevard as Vista Heights Drive. Staff apologizes for the error.
Okay, thank you.
This is a request to amend condition number 14 of the Miramonte tentative map on a site approximately 834 acres in size. The map. When it's up, you'll see the area of the tentative map is outlined in red. It's generally located east of Los Altos Parkway between Belmar Drive and Vista Heights Drive. The existing zoning is new urban district. There's no proposed changes to the existing zoning or the land use plan. The Miramonte Plan Development Handbook and the Miramonte Tentative Map were approved back in 2005. At the time of that approval of the tentative map, the Regional Transportation Commission, or RTC model, called for widening from 2 lanes to 4 lanes the section of Los Altos Parkway from Belmar Drive to Vista Boulevard when the final maps are recorded for 600 units in the Miramonte tentative map area. That area is outlined in cyan, the affected portion of Los Altos Parkway. So condition number 14 of the Miramonte tentative map required the widening of Los Altos Parkway to address that RTC standard for planned long-range roadway changes and improvements. As of the date of this staff report, final maps have been recorded for 589 units, close to that 600-unit trigger for condition number 14 compliance. The RTC model, the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan, has since changed and no longer requires Los Altos Parkway to be widened to 4 lanes. The applicant's requesting that condition number 14 therefore be amended to comply with the current RTC model and standards. Amending that condition will not change the number of approved lots in Miramonte, nor will it affect the size, the layout, the design standards of any of the existing or remaining lots. The requested amendment of condition 14 only affects the off-site improvements that are required on Los Altos Parkway. A traffic analysis was submitted by Traffic Works that evaluated existing traffic and estimated future demand based on approved land uses, both in the Miramonte plan development and the other plan developments that access Los Altos Parkway. The analysis was performed when the 448 townhome subdivision to the south of this project was approved back in May of 2017. This traffic analysis evaluated all existing and proposed traffic impacts on Los Altos Parkway and suggested a mitigation measure that was evaluated by RTC and the City of Sparks. Let me get that up for you. Let's see, make that a little bigger. There we go. The proposed mitigation measure is to extend the westbound left turn lane pocket from 120 feet, as it exists today, to 400 feet, which is shown on this graphic, at the intersection of Los Altos Parkway and Vista Boulevard. This mitigation measure will allow Los Altos Parkway to operate at a level of service, LOSD, which is the standard LOS for Los Altos Parkway, currently required by RTC's plan. The current level of service at LOSC. If approved, the amended condition number 14 would read, 14, roadway improvement on Los Altos Parkway. The developer shall comply with the conditions of the traffic study prepared by Traffic Works dated 9/8/17 to include without limitation the left turn lengthening improvement at Los Altos Parkway South and Vista Boulevard intersection, extending the westbound left turn pocket on Los Altos Parkway to accommodate 400 plus or minus feet of storage. Staff requested comments from public agencies, and the responses that were received have been incorporated into the findings and the proposed conditions of approval for this item. Staff has confirmed with RTC staff by phone that there have been no changes to the Regional Transportation Plan, RTP, for this area since the day of that letter. A special plan review meeting was held on January 24th with the applicant's representatives present, as well as staff from engineering and the Sparks Fire Department, and all parties are in agreement with the proposed change to condition 14. Given that this proposed amendment to condition 14 would have no material effect on the tentative map for Miramonte, other than to bring the proposed mitigation measure for Los Altos Parkway into compliance with the current RTC model, staff is in support of amending condition 14 to this effect. All other conditions of approval from the original tentative map shall remain the same and are included with this approval. It is the opinion of staff that findings T1 through T12 can be found and are as follows. Finding T1, environmental and health laws and regulations concerning water and air pollution, the disposal of solid waste, facilities to supply water, community or public sewage disposal, and where applicable, individual systems for sewage disposal were considered. The amendment of condition 14 will have no impact on the existing compliance of the Miramonte tentative map regarding environmental health laws and water and air pollution or the supply of water or disposal of sewage and solid waste, conditions 3 and 4. Finding T2, the availability of water which meets applicable health standards and is sufficient in quality for the reasonably foreseeable needs of the subdivision have been considered. The amendment of condition 14 will not impact the existing compliance of the Miramonte tentative map regarding the availability of water because the condition pertains to off-site improvements, condition 3. Finding T3, the availability and accessibility of utilities has been considered. The amendment of condition 14 will not impact the existing compliance of the Miramonte tentative map regarding the availability and accessibility of utilities. Finding T4, the availability and accessibility of public services such as schools, police, protection, transportation, recreation, and parks has been considered. The amendment of condition 14 will not impact the existing compliance of the Miramonte tentative map regarding the availability and accessibility to public services. Finding T5, the request conforms to the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinances. Comprehensive plan goals and policies that are relevant to this proposal include Goal C1, develop a complete, efficient transportation system that gives Sparks residents of all ages and visitors access to employment, housing, services, and recreation throughout urban Washoe County. Staff believes that the amendment of condition number 14 will meet the goal of providing adequate access for residents and visitors and will continue to provide an acceptable LOS as identified by RTC. Policy C1, work with the Regional Transportation Commission to add roadway capacity as necessary to accommodate Sparks' growth. Working in partnership with RTC to assess and develop roadway capacity needs for long-term planning achieves a moderated and controlled development of roadway infrastructure to meet the future needs of the city. RTC has removed the widening of Los Altos Parkway from its list of long-range roadway improvements. Amendment of condition 14 brings street improvement plans for this area into conformance with current RTC modeling. Goal MG6, promote compact development to reduce the per capita cost of providing infrastructure, public facilities, and public services. Staff believes that the amendment of condition 14 will reduce the per capita cost of providing and maintaining infrastructure by reducing the total number of lanes that need to be constructed and ultimately maintained by the city of Sparks. Finding T6, general conformity with the city's master plan of streets and highways has been considered. The amendment of condition 14 is in compliance with the current RTC model and will maintain LOSD. All other streets within the Miramonte tentative map will remain the same. This amendment does not change the subdivision street design or layout, conditions 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15. Finding T7, the effect of the proposed subdivision on existing public streets and the need for new streets or highways to serve the subdivision has been considered. The 2005 RTC model that was in place when this tentative map was originally approved required the widening of Los Altos Parkway from 2 to 4 lanes from Belmar Drive to Vista Boulevard. The current RTC model no longer requires this as a mitigation measure for Los Altos Parkway to operate at the acceptable LOSD. The proposed mitigation from the applicant provided traffic analysis is to extend the left turn pocket to 400 feet from the intersection of Los Altos Parkway and Vista Boulevard. The city engineer and RTC staff have reviewed this mitigation measure and are in support of the mitigation. Finding T8, the physical characteristics of the land, such as floodplain, slope, and soil, has been considered. The amendment of condition 14 will not impact the existing compliance of the Miramonte tentative map regarding floodplain, slope, and soil. There are no changes to the subdivision's number of lots or design, conditions 5, 18, and 26. Finding T9, the recommendations and comments of those entities reviewing the tentative map pursuant to NRS 278.330 to 278.348 inclusive have been considered. The city has received a comment letter from RTC, which is attached to the staff report, Exhibit 6. RTC's comments and recommendations generally support the amendment of condition 14 and are discussed throughout the staff report and the conditions of approval. Finding T10, the availability and accessibility of fire protection including but not limited to the availability and accessibility of water and services for the prevention and containment of fires, including fires in wildlands, has been considered. The amendment of condition 14 will not impact the existing compliance of the Miramonte tentative map regarding fire protection, condition 19. Finding T11, the application as submitted and conditioned will address identified impacts. This section identifies project-specific issues not discussed above, such as landscaping. The amendment of condition 14 will not impact the existing compliance of the Miramonte tentative map regarding landscaping, condition 8. Architecture, the amendment of condition 14 will not impact the existing compliance of Miramonte tentative map regarding architecture. Condition 24. Finding T12. Public notice was given as required by the Sparks Municipal Code and Nevada revised statutes. Public notice for tentative maps is accomplished through the posting of the agenda for a public meeting. The Planning Commission agenda was posted on January 30th. Staff has not received any additional comments. The Planning Commission and the City Council meetings function as the public meetings for this item. Staff believes the findings of fact have been made and recommends that the Planning Commission make a recommendation of approval to the City Council. This concludes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Are there any questions for staff? Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, hearing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for comments or possible motion.
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Commissioner Vanderwell.
I move to forward a recommendation of approval to City Council to amend condition number 14, approving conditions of approval 1 through 27 associated with PCN 04051, adopting findings T1 through T12, and the facts supporting these findings is set forth in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Vanderwell. We have a motion to approve. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Brock. Any comments or discussion on the motion? I have just one quick comment, but before the vote for the record. This commission, we received a lot of public comment last year concerning the two townhome projects that we saw. And I think there's an expectation at least the eyes of the public and what we heard from the residents that there is a need for a 4-lane, roadway in this area. However, I think given the model that our staff and RTC staff have concurred with, that's no longer necessary, and the proposed improvements to the turn lane there on Los Altos and Vista should help with the situation. It's always kind of tough in my eyes when the city is amending conditions that would essentially bring forth millions of dollars in infrastructure and road infrastructure. But with this case, given the facts presented, I have to go with our staff and RTC on this, and I hope down the road that there isn't a situation where the city ends up, expanding this roadway if it's not needed and using that out of the city CIP or some other funding source. So just some comments. Are there any comments or other further discussion on the motion? Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, commissioners. Move on to our final general business item of the evening, and that's PCN 180072. This is a request for approval of the Phase 9 Kylie Ranch North Handbook. Hey, Karen.
Good evening, Chairman Carey and Planning Commissioners. I'm Karen Melby, Development Service Manager. This is a request for the approval of Phase 9 Final Development Handbook for the Kylie Ranch North Planned Development Area. This is generally located on the northwest corner of Wingfield Hills Road and Kylie Parkway. Wingfield Roads here will be constructed in the future, and this is Kylie Parkway coming up. The proposed Kylie Ranch North Phase 9 Handbook covers approximately 29.5 acres. The handbook designates land uses in Phase 9 as 25 acres of high residential and 4.26 acres of open space. City Council approved the amended tentative development handbook for Kylie Ranch North Plan Development on July 11th, 2016. The tentative handbook covers the entire 874.2 acres. Unlike other planned developments, Kylie Ranch North is being reviewed and approved in phases as final handbooks are submitted for each respective phase. To date, there are 8 final handbooks that have been reviewed and approved and recorded for the Kylie Ranch North Plan Development. The handbook being reviewed tonight is the 9th handbook, or hence we are calling Phase 9. The land use designations are open space along the east and north boundary, and then high residential, which allows rental or for sale multi-family dwellings at a density of 18 to 23.9 dwelling units per acre. The handbook specifies the permitted and conditional uses, the project approval procedures, the land use development standards, streetscape and development standards, design standards and guidelines for the site planning, architecture, and landscaping. And lastly, construction and operation and maintenance requirements. The handbook does not include development plans, and any future development will be developed in accordance with the handbook standards. Staff wants to inform you about some changes in the Phase 9 handbook. As staff was completing the staff report preparation, staff realized that the Phase 9 handbook incorporated land uses, which is in conformance with the comprehensive plan amendment that was approved and certified by City Council on January 28th. I'm pulling a Scott. However, the amended tentative handbook has not been approved to date. So staff had asked that these exhibits be changed. That is on page 2-1, and then also 2-3 is noted that the approval was pending. The third page that was amended is page 1-9, which is a summary of land uses by acreages and densities. The revised handbook was provided to the Planning Commission at the study session on February 5th. Sparks Municipal Code 20.02.012 and NRS 278A.54 both specify review process for the final approval of the Plan Development Handbook. Staff has compared the handbook with the tentative handbook, approved tentative handbook, and determined that the development standards in the handbook are in substantial compliance. There are 5 criteria to determine substantial compliance. The first one, it does not vary proposed residential density or intensity from the Kylie Ranch North Plan Development Handbook. The high-density residential designation permits a maximum density of 23.9 units per acre for multifamily housing, as does the tentative handbook. The handbook does not propose any changes to the maximum density. The next criteria is it does not vary the proposed ratio of residential to non-residential. The handbook designates 25.25 acres as high residential, the same acreage that is in the tentative handbook. The next criteria is does not reduce the common open space area. The handbook designates 4.26 acres of open space allocated between a buffer of Phase 9 and the Lazy 5 Regional Park to the north and the regional trail connection to Lazy 5 along the eastern boundary of Phase 9. This is consistent with the tentative handbook. The fourth criteria does not increase the floor area proposed for the non-residential uses from the approved tentative handbook. Phase 9 handbook does not have any non-residential uses, and they're all designated high residential. There is no increase in the total ground area covered by the buildings, nor is there substantial change in the height of buildings. The development standards in handbook do not vary from those in the tentative handbook. Future development plans will be reviewed in accordance with the handbook. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Any questions of staff? Are there any questions of the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for comments or a possible motion. Commissioner
Mr.
Brock.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I move to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council of PCN 18-0072 as the Kylie Ranch North Phase 9 Final Development Handbook is in substantial compliance with the Kylie Ranch North Tentative Development Handbook, based on the findings as set forth in the staff report and the facts supporting these findings.
Thank you, Commissioner Brock. Is there a second on the motion?
I'll say.
I'll give that one to Commissioner
times.
Peterson again. He just beat you, Commissioner Blanco. Okay, is there any comments or questions on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we'll move on to item number 13 on our agenda. That's public comment. This is our final public comment period for tonight's evening, for this evening's meeting. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period. We'll move on to item number 14, and that's commissioner comments. Any commissioners wish to make any comments at this time?
I'd like to.
Commissioner Reed.
I'd like to thank staff for the significant amount of work they did preparing this agenda. I mean, there was a lot going on, so thank you for that. It was very thorough.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Reed. Commissioner
Yeah,
Fewens?
Commissioner Fewens, and just one last parting shot on PCN 180068. I just wanted to be on the record that David Jickling, the Director of Public Transportation for RTC, did say tonight that the 4th Street Station was 100% occupied. I think that just over the last 6 months, there has been discussion with our sister city next to us that that station was not used at 100% capacity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Fewens. Well, I guess we'll move back up to item number 6, informational items for Armando.
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, we will endeavor to see if we can provide for a warmer room in the future. I realize it gets cold in here. So far, you know, we've struggled with the programming of the thermostat. And then the other question is, I guess, would the commission like us to install Jeopardy-style buzzers?
That might help. That might help with get those seconds made. I would just, we're bringing it back to item number 14, Commissioner comments. I would just like to thank the commission for all their work tonight. Thank you for putting up with me in my first meeting as chair. This was quite the agenda, so thank you for your help with that, and thank you, staff. We'll move on to item number 15, that's adjournment. We'll call this meeting closed at 7:37. Thank you very much, everybody.